In about 25 years of being a journalist, I have interviewed heads of state, I have interviewed corporate chieftains, I've interviewed some really big celebrities, but perhaps I have never seen the kind of intrigue, curiosity, and hunger to hear someone as I have heard with my guest tonight, Ma Sheela. And those of you who are perhaps too young to remember the late 70s or the 80s when Rajneesh, or Bhagwan Rajneesh as he was known to his followers, was a cult figure in India, the Netflix documentary Wild Wild Country made us reacquaint and rediscover the character called Sheela. Viewers confessed to an extremely conflicted response as they watched Sheela's life unfold on their screens. Many loved her, some hated her, some wanted to hate her, but just couldn't. What was common in all viewer responses is that nobody could ignore her. So please put your hands together to welcome Ma Sheela to this conversation.
Thank you, Barkha. Please, we begin the conversation.
Thank you. I want to ask you something. For those of us who've seen Wild Wild Country, and I have, and I know many people in this audience would have, you came across as this bohemian, rebellious, often foul-mouthed, brave, reckless. I could use many adjectives. Today I'm looking at a woman who seems very polite, soft-spoken, elegant. Is that age, or has Sheela changed? Is Sheela no longer wild?
It is a mystery. And Sheela was always polite and loving when she was young. This front that I had to put up, that was a deterrent from people who were trying to discriminate against our community. It was a game to play, and I played it well. But then I had a wonderful person educating me for that, Bhagwan.
You call him Bhagwan, and you have remained loyal to him in all of your public statements all these years later. But he did not stand by you. He called you a criminal. He blamed you for all kinds of crimes, from poisoning the people of a town in the United States of America, to wiretapping him, to even trying to assassinate some US officials. And it's never very clear to me, as a woman, why you call this man Bhagwan when he didn't stand by you.
He didn't stand by me in that moment when I left. It was a lover's quarrel. And lover's quarrel, one sees at its ugly end. But that should not change me. I cannot forget what I have learned from this man. And where you can learn, like I have learned from him, it doesn't even matter what he says. That is immaterial.
Lovers' quarrels, people patch up, people kiss and make up. They become friends again, even if they don't remain lovers. Aren't you being too kind? Because today, if there is a perception of crimes associated with you, and you spent time in prison, I just want our audience here to know that. You spent months in prison, you pleaded guilty, you did not have the money that was needed to put up your defense, so you did a plea bargain and you pleaded guilty. And among the things you pleaded guilty to was to, poison a whole town, and we'll talk about that later. But I'm still intrigued to understand why Bhagwan Rajneesh, as you call him, his abandonment of you is something you're so benign about, so forgiving about. Is it love when the man is not loyal to you and respectful of you?
I don't see it as a loyalty or disrespect. I saw a man who was helpless. He was among the wrong company and involved with wrong drug use. It was medicine, but abuse of medicine. And when you take drugs or when you have addiction, you do alter your behavior. I work at times with drug addicts. I know how they alter their behavior. At that point, Bhagwan required compassion. And Bhagwan had taught us sannyasins a lot of compassion. So for me, it is not a conflict of betrayal and love. In love, there is never a betrayal. Such duality we bring in the world. Such duality brings doubts in us. But I didn't have that conflict. And I still don't have that conflict. If I would have to do it again, I would do exactly the same way.
So, on the ride here, I was asking you, what is the one question you're really tired of answering? And what is that one question that everybody asks you? And you said, everybody asks me, did you have sex with Rajneesh? And the answer is no. Now, my question is therefore somewhat different. When he took that position against you, and you say today that he was under the influence of drugs, he was helpless, he was lonely, perhaps he was not in his full senses, I want to remind you, painful as it might be for you today, that he said the same about you. He issued a statement and he said, she's going crazy about you. You ran everything for him. You were his most loyal aide. You were his voice when he was on a Maun Vrat and he did not speak for 3.5 years. And he said about you, Sheela is upset because I refuse to have sex with her. I won't have sex with my secretary. I have to tell you, as a woman, this disturbs me and I want you to be angry. Why aren't you angry?
I cannot satisfy you.
But it's a question that it's a question that puzzles me and I want to understand.
Love and sex have nothing to do with one another. We use love when we have a desire of sex. But that was not my relationship with Bhagwan. I loved this man. And in love, I had no need. My love felt so complete that if I would have died in that moment, I have lived full life. In this complete moment, you don't think about it. You have no need. And I had my own lovers. They were more suited to me. So it was not that I was deprived of sex. I was not deprived. I enjoyed myself well, and I had many lovers also, if I may say so. Young children don't copy me, huh? You are sitting here. Otherwise, Mama, Papa will throw you out, and that won't be cool.
But your Papa, we'll go back to some of these issues, but your Papa asked you not to marry the first man you have sex with. Your Papa was ahead of his times.
This is true. When I was 16, going to America for studies, my father sat me day before our flight and said, I'm sending you there to learn. Don't get married to the first person you meet. Experiment before marriage. Find someone that suits you. And there is nothing wrong about going through few people to see if they are compatible to you. This was a wonderful sex education my parents gave me, and I am ever grateful. And thereafter I met Bhagwan. There I understood more deeply about the sex and sexuality.
In one of your interviews, you described the cult of Bhagwan Rajneesh as a marriage of religion and capitalism. And you said that this was a very, very smart combination. And in fact, if I remember, you drew when the interviewer got a bit hostile, you drew an analogy with the Vatican. And you said, why? It's smart. It's religion meets capitalism. Can you explain that? How do you imagine a Bhagwan marrying capitalism and spirituality?
Bhagwan had a dream to create a community where his followers can be together, like-minded people, and do like-minded things. For that, you require infrastructure. Infrastructure doesn't come easy without money. You have to build houses, you have to build hotels, restaurants. You require both. Vatican, when you go to Vatican, I don't know how many of you have been there, but they have also infrastructure. And it is not just Vatican, we take this school. This school also requires infrastructure to offer you education. So if you cannot put two activities together and create a fusion, it would be difficult. Something would be missing. And Bhagwan was a man of vision, man of dream. He wanted to create something that was never created before. So he used his ability, he understood the modern mentality, modern issues, and he tried to synthesize.
He was also a man of Rolls Royces.
Definitely, my man of Rolls Royces.
How many at last count?
I bought him 96.
What did he do?
I don't know what happened afterwards.
You don't feel bad that you didn't take one away for yourself?
My sister asks me often such questions.
What did he do with these 96 Rolls Royces? You know, capitalism is one thing, ostentatious display and flaunting of wealth is another. What was he tapping into? What were you all tapping into with that flamboyant display of wealth?
Well, one of the things that he used to enjoy going for a ride every afternoon.
And he needed a different Rolls Royce every day?
Definitely, to match his clothing. He used
And
to wear wonderful clothing.
A dress matched to a Rolls Royce every day?
Yeah, why not? Why have limitations?
And this is spiritual?
Did I say this spiritual? Did I put that value on him about spirituality? That is the problem with us people. We try to capture an individual into our framework. And often our framework is very small. And then person doesn't fit, then our definitions go broken, then we feel angry, upset. We were not bound by all these definitions. And I don't believe we will be bound by it even today.
Fair enough. I agree that most people can't be typecast. And one of the things you've said about him is that you saw him as fallible. You understood that just because you said Bhagwan when you spoke about him, it didn't mean that he was always good and always godly.
He was human, just like you and me, with his qualities and his follies. I had no conflict with it. When conflict came and I could not resolve, I left. I went my own way.
And you carry no anger, no bitterness. You know, another old interview of yours that I was watching, and this is decades old, there is a slightly aggressive news anchor, and he says to you that the allegation is that there is money coming in from prostitution, and that's one of the revenue sources. And you say that prostitution is somebody's profession, if it's somebody's choice, you're not going to judge it. At which point of time he uses the word pimp for the cult and for Bhagwan Rajneesh. And you respond, you're shocked, you're angry. Could you share with the audience here how you dealt with these kind of allegations and having to answer them, because he wasn't speaking, he had taken a vow of silence. So when you were faced with these questions,
it is said to know how we react. Often people react with what they are used to. People, how they perceive life. They perceive life through their perversion. Maybe this journalist was talking about pimp because he had more understanding of pimps.
That's what you said to him actually. You said good luck to you and your pimps.
Right. So what you do, sometimes we project, reflect our needs on the others. And then we are offended. I have to take an objection to word cult. I'm not going to create a combat here, but I want you to think about it. What is cult? Cult is something that we don't understand, something we are unaware of, something that we are afraid of. Then you dismiss it by calling it a cult. People around Bhagwan were real people, just like me and many others that came from all over the world. These people were highly educated. They were highly established, some of them who were around Bhagwan. We created a city which today, after 35 years, is considered to be one of the very fine, comprehensive plan of the city ever done in America. That was the city built. Fearful people cannot build it. A cult could not build it. It requires deep roots. And deep roots, we don't understand. We are only full of doubts. Something we don't understand, like that. But here is many young children here, students here, teachers are here. I request you all, think before the words you use. Bhagwan was an orator, flawless. And there was never a word came out of his mouth when he would speak to people that was weightless. So we can learn from this word cult. If you ever have to use word cult, be sensitive to others' feelings. Yeah, it makes you feel boisterous and righteous, but that's not the righteousness. We are here to converse. In conversation, one should remain open.
Fair enough, but let me ask you about another word. I take the point that you don't agree or like my use of the word cult, but I've heard you talking about another word that was used by Bhagwan Rajneesh often, and that was enlightenment. And I watched an interview of yours and you said, well, you know, whenever things were going slow, Bhagwan would tell a few of his followers, you're enlightened. And then the interviewer asks you, So are you saying it's a hoax? And you said, well, in that sense, maybe, but don't blame only Bhagwan Rajneesh, blame these people who were ready to believe that they were enlightened. So what does this word enlightenment and the way it was used by Bhagwan Rajneesh say to you? Was it meant? Did it mean anything? Was it a slogan? Was it a marketing moment?
Enlightenment and meditation are wonderful products. Products which doesn't require guarantee. Products you cannot return back. If you don't like the product, you put it in the trash can. You have to understand there was a hype to become enlightened. Who gave the definition of enlightenment? Where all the people all over the world who don't understand the word at all. Where does this word come? From greed. Everybody wants to become enlightened overnight. Why? So they can set up a shop of guru. But you have to be a skillful salesman as Bhagwan to set up a good shop.
That's very candid. Now see, if I had said that, you would have said you're not being fair. But when you say it, it's fine.
You see, but I said it right from right feelings.
Are you saying Bhagwan Rajneesh was a salesman?
Definitely. Look at his publications.
So why was he Bhagwan then? Are you saying God is a salesman or godly?
Is Bhagwan cannot be a name? I know another Bhagwan, Sanjay, the designer. Raw Mango. He has a tailor who is called Bhagwan. I had so much fun with him. I had so much fun. I said, oh, Bhagwan, come here.
So you're saying, and actually that makes me a little more comfortable, you're saying Bhagwan Rajneesh was his name, his full name.
Exactly.
It wasn't that he was God or godly.
He was God for me, for my heart. He was king of my heart. And he can be a God, it didn't matter to me. But he was a man that I loved, man that I fall in love with him, man who was fallible and a genius at the same time.
Let's take this audience back to that time when you set up Rajneeshpuram, you set up this town from scratch in Oregon, United States of America, and you start clashing with the local population there, which is what the documentary on Netflix actually shows us. And initially, they strike fire first. They, in fact, make a violent attack on Hotel Rajneesh, and you decide that everybody now must have weapons. Can you talk a little bit about those years and why you had to be almost like this warrior lioness, going out, fighting with the locals, and taking in the course of it many controversial decisions, which we're going to talk about one by one. But talk about that moment and the xenophobia of that time.
We were in an area which was primary area of rednecks and bigots. They were almost like fossil. Their villages were ghost towns. There were a village called Antelope, 19 miles away from the ranch where we were building our city. 90 miles of dirt road takes you 45, 50 minutes to an hour to go. So how far they were from us. We were not bothering them. but they didn't want anyone with other color than their own. It is the same region where in late 60s they had lynched a black man. So you can understand the mentality of the region we were in. They attacked us. We were creating our infrastructure, our life there. We were within our rights of Constitution, American Constitution, and within the legal rights of the region. At that time, they made us a political issue and they became violent. They started burning our ranch. I speak with Bhagwan, how should we deal with it? Bhagwan said, you order weapons, train our Peace Corps, and you present these weapons with a press conference. What you need is a deterrent. And when you are in front of a media, you be outrageously aggressive. He was never happy with my aggression. He said, you fail in your aggression.
He thought you should be more aggressive?
That's right.
But you were like showing the finger to press people. You came up with this.
Even today.
I mean, we're in a school and I think you and I are both going to get expelled. But you came up with this phrase, tough titties.
Right.
I mean, how could you have been more aggressive if you tried? You had weapons. You were showing your finger to anyone who questioned you. You were calling news anchors like good luck to you and your pimps.
Right.
What more did he want you to do?
He wanted me to protect our community with all my strength, energy, and the words that I could find in my little brain. It did help a bit. What was shocking for them was the press conference when we showed them how good shots we were. We displayed these beautiful weapons that we had. And we gave a fantastic press conference, became sensation. And
so you all learned, how to use a gun?
Right, a lot of us.
You know how to use a gun?
Well, I knew if something happened to Bhagwan or somebody attacked Bhagwan, I'll be a bullseye. That confidence I had. Plus, I was the mother of the commune. I took the role of the mother of the commune. These people, when they came to attack our children by taking children away from us, to put them in a Christian foster homes, so they are not being together with these pagans that we were called. There, I said, you touch one of my people or my children, I will take 15 of you. That was my conviction. That was my responsibility. That was my courage to protect my people and Bhagwan.
Let me ask you about a conflict that I know many people felt when they watched Wild Wild Country. They saw this mother of the commune. They saw this courageous, spunky woman in you who was ready literally to do anything to protect her people and her community. But they also then saw other charges that were brought to your door. You were accused of organizing salmonella bacteria in the salads of a town where more than 700 people were hospitalized. You were accused of being involved in an assassination attempt on a US attorney of a state for Oregon. You were accused of wiretapping Bhagwan Rajneesh himself. I read a headline once by a journalist that said, "She poisoned a town, but I still love her." They were talking about you. Who is the real Sheela? Is Sheela the person who poisoned a town? Is Sheela the person who attempted murder? You pleaded guilty to some of these charges, and Bhagwan Rajneesh accused you of most of these things that I've listed.
He can accuse me of many more, and shoulders are big enough to take it. These are only accusations. Accusation does not make you a criminal. Let me tell you about charges and my plea agreement. I was charged for immigration fraud because I brought Bhagwan from India to America, though on a legal visa I had brought him. But I pled guilty to it, because if you don't pay guilty to something, they will not accept the plea agreement. This is a legal situation. I pled guilty to Bhagwan's room being bugged.
Did you do that?
Of course.
You did do it.
With Bhagwan's consent.
Why?
For his protection.
Explain that.
There were a lot of people trying to enter the area of Bhagwan's house. Bhagwan was vulnerable. He had a couple of caretakers living in his house. And if something happens, then I must be aware of it instantly to offer him the help. And Bhagwan talks about it just today. One of old friend and a sannyasin came to visit me. He even told me exactly, did you know what Bhagwan talked about it after you have left? And he showed me a paragraph where Bhagwan says, Sheela could not do me any harm. She would die for me. So this love, this trust exists between us. He had given me permission. I accepted permission, organized, because I lived from Bhagwan's house about 2 kilometers away. I have to be aware if something happens to Bhagwan or somebody attacks, that I can immediately send security there. We had security in the gate, but we were living in the mountains, and you cannot border or create a wall around the area, because it was a vast range of 63,000 acres. Imagine, it was as big a land as Manhattan, New York City. And people could enter from any part of it. So come back to it. So I pleaded guilty to it. Okay, I bugged his room. No big deal. Now come to salmonella. The salmonella was in 1984. This incident happened. They had people from Center for Disease Control, Federal Bureau, American Bureau, who had come and controlled the region. They found 5 restaurants with salmonella, with bad hygiene. They did a report to the government of how salmonella spread. That report, after Bhagwan's accusations, was made confidential. And they created a new report on Bhagwan's statement and few sannyasins who cooperated with Bhagwan for their own necks. For me, I'm tired of speaking about it. Still, I pleaded non-guilty plea. What does non-guilty plea mean? Non-guilty plea is that you are not guilty, but you are ready to sign a plea because circumstances are such that I have no way of fighting it. I would have never gotten in America a fair trial. It was a Republican government. I was given budget of $2 million to fight. Where would I get that money? And that too without guarantee that I would win. So when people talk about it, they do not understand full situation. They do not understand the details, but they are ready to judge, they are ready to talk about it. And I would tell every one of you here, one thing I have learned in life: do not judge, remain open. It will change your life in such a way that you will start enjoying life.
Let me ask you this differently, because the fact that even today you are not angry with Bhagwan Rajneesh for accusing you of all of these things, for this resulting in prison time for you, that you still say that you love him. Is there anything you would not have done for him? Is there a line that you would have drawn and said to him, so far and no further? Because when I listen to you now, you accept the charge of bugging his room, but you say that that was with his consent and for his protection. And other than that, you say you were framed and you had no option but to accept those accusations. Is there anything Bhagwan Rajneesh could have asked you to do that you wouldn't have done? Would you have killed somebody for him?
No. This is, when we talk like that, I feel it is disrespect towards Bhagwan. You can call me whatever you want to call me. I'm not bothered. But when what this question implies is that Bhagwan would have said that.
But he accused you of attempted murder.
Yeah, let him. It made him feel good for a moment.
You went to jail.
Yeah, and do I have any dents on my body? No. Definitely not.
Is there something not unfair about the fact that the women were penalized and the man at the heart of this, nothing happened to him?
Well, he did go to jail for 15 days. He could not, he didn't, if he would have been longer there, probably he would have died. And I was much stronger, you know, he had made me strong. I could live with it.
Talk about your time in jail. talk about that and how
Yes.
it influenced you. You were saying to me earlier that you started actually really missing your parents, and in the inmates in jail, you started seeing your parents in those older people inside prison. How did you cope with that time? Because you actually were let off much earlier for good behavior, as the American legal system calls it.
It was not a good behavior in that sense.
I mean, the wild Sheela now cannot transform into this good girl. That's not what I meant.
That image will never be erased, and I accept it. What it was a masterpiece I had painted in prison. There is a little law that says when you save US government or the prison government money, then you can get some time free from your sentencing. And I had single-handedly painted the whole unit of the women where we were with very little material and no ladder, but I managed to paint it. I cut all the windows and doors freehand. That was my masterpiece. And it gave me 15 days or 1 month good, 30 days good days, put me into Christmas kick out. And I went out. I think it was the plan of existence that made me do it. And I went and I did it. I call it my masterpiece.
When you look back at those years, is there you said earlier in this conversation, if I had to do it all over again, I would. But all of us learn from some of our choices. As you said, we're all fallible. None of us are perfect. Do you think that just like Antelope and the people of Antelope and this redneck village were hostile and xenophobic, do you think they were mistakes that you all made? Let me give you an example. How you, for example, cleaned up homeless people. So a racist decision takes place because this area says, let's just cancel the vote because they don't want all of you to be participating in the vote. Clearly an example of racism. You want to counter it. Now you counter it by actually bussing in homeless people who've been cleaned up. And later, I read, and in the documentary also it's there, that you're accused of actually drugging or sedating these homeless people, these poor homeless people. Is that something that happened? And if it happened, do you regret it?
This is fiction that homeless people were drugged. I hope over the years, these memories of fiction will fade away. When we moved homeless for voting purposes, we offered them a home, whoever wants to have lived with us. This even today, it is customary in America for presidential elections or any other elections, homeless are used this way. And if you think of it, Trump just doesn't use homeless, he uses Russia and Ukraine. So why I am being questioned and not the other politicians? We were trying to take our self-government in our hand so we can continue to live peacefully there.
So you did what politicians do?
Naturally.
You didn't think of ever getting into politics?
No.
Why not?
What do I need politics for? I had everything in Rajneeshpuram.
When you lost Rajneeshpuram and you lost Rajneesh in terms of not having him standing by you in support. You go to prison, you come out. Did you ever reconnect with your old life? Did you meet those people again? Did you contact Rajneesh again?
No. I never looked back. Something I had learned from my parents: move forward, burn the bridges behind. And I did it. But if sometimes somebody came through curiosity to my house or wrote me a letter or wrote me an email, I replied to them. And I do that even now. I see a friend, he's somewhere here. We used to be in Pune together when
the
Bhagwan,
ashram there?
Early times of Pune, and we used to know each other in Bombay when Bhagwan was in Bombay Woodland apartment. Met today. And when we hugged each other, all the years
just melted away. But as the self-described mother of that community, did you, it's clear and you've said repeatedly you don't carry any anger or bitterness with Bhagwan Rajneesh. Did you feel like nobody stood with me, here I am alone making a new life for myself? Was there some sense of loneliness? Was there some sense of bitterness?
No, I never felt lonely because I was my best friend. And being your own best friend, you will be able to move forward much easier. It was a certain independence, certain freedom I felt. And it was wonderful. For the first time, I was without responsibility, only responsible for myself.
What has been the toughest moment of your life?
Toughest moment of my life was knowing from within, without any words spoken around me, feeling that while I was in prison, what my parents must have suffered. It was, I felt that they suffered more than I suffered. It is the nature of parents.
Yeah. How do you reconcile, and I want to ask you first, did you see Wild Wild Country? Did you see the full series?
No, no.
Why not?
I have lived it. I know it is boring for me.
Okay, but how do you reconcile people's impressions of you and sometimes expectations of you with who you know yourself to be? And I ask you this again because I know so many women, in particular women, who watched this Netflix documentary and who said, oh my God, what a radical woman, you know, a strong individual, spunky, the word badass was used for you again and again.
Right.
And then you want to forgive Rajneesh everything that he did. And that's disappointing to some women, but you know who you are. So how do you reconcile who Sheela is with what people want her to be or expect of her?
I want to explain to you, most of us live for approval. We want approval of parents, friends, bosses, colleagues, whoever we come across. I didn't need approval. I fully understand that you all have opinion of Sheela from your own experience and your own vision or how you feel about me. And it is how it is. If you go to Bhagwan's discourse, You come out, 5,000 people are sitting, each one listens to him differently. So why should I restrict opinion of yours because I see myself as I am? I have nothing to do with your opinion. And I am generous enough to accept your opinion. Feel free to call me whatever you want to call me. Just don't call me spiritual. Criminal is better than spiritual for me.
Okay, now I'm going to open this up for questions, but I have one last question to ask you. This trip to India, coming back to, in a sense, one of your home countries, after more than 3 decades, how do you make sense of the response to you? As I said in the beginning, I have rarely seen such curiosity, such hunger to hear someone. I know that designers are tripping over themselves to dress you up. You've been, the elite of India are wanting to wine and dine you, and everybody's wanting to hear you. And we're meant to be a pretty prudish society. So is this like the prudes living vicariously through you? What's going on here?
What's going on? You know, it reminds me of a beautiful story Bhagwan used to tell us about Buddha. And Buddha is traveling through a village. People shower him with wonderful gifts. Buddha and his disciples accept it. They move on to the next village. Buddha was spat on his face. And Buddha, without thinking about it, just wiped it off with his shawl or a cloth that he was wearing. In the evening, when he was sitting among his disciples, his chief disciple Anand asked him, "We don't understand you. Did you not get angry when they spat on you?" And Buddha said, "They offer me what they have. And I feel right now I am receiving this wonderful love and pleasantries of people that I had not had it for last 30 years. So I'm enjoying it, and for me it is not a problem, it's not a conflict. There are no ideology conflicts in me. When I go back to Switzerland, I will get back to my old lifestyle. And if I come again, if people want to spit on me, they can do it, no problem.
I like that you don't care one way or the other. That's an attitude to really emulate. And in Switzerland, you are running to residential facilities, as it were, for people who are battling mental illness, grave mental illness. Could you speak a little bit about that?
I work with people who are heavy schizophrenic, suffer with heavy aggression, depression. I work with borderline. I work with multiple personalities with schizophrenia, with multiple voices in their head and go crazy, etc. I also work with Alzheimer, Parkinson, and young and old dementia. We work with terminal illnesses till the end of the person. It is very, very special work that I do, and I help them to live again, enjoy again, dance again, laugh again in life. I have a very simple concept. I hope I can bring this concept to India also. This concept is called being there. I am there for you and you are there for me. I fulfill your deficit, you fulfill my deficit. And on this simple basis, I have created these homes. These homes have been dedicated to my parents, Matru Sadan in honor of mother, Bapu Sadan in honor of father. Because I was missing them very much. I had felt their pain of me being in prison. And I wanted to do something to ease their pain, release their pain. So I started seeing in old people my parents. And it worked out beautifully. I got the life's best gift. My parents, I was able to bring them after establishing the homes to Switzerland permanently. And they lived short time with me, but that short time was a very valuable, big time for us three. My parents lived with me last 2 years.
Would you ever have thought 35 years ago that Sheela would be living this Sheela's life?
No, I didn't know, because I move in life spontaneously. And spontaneously I left Bhagwan, spontaneously Bhagwan accused me, spontaneously I go in prison, come out, and I have to get back on my feet. And I wanted to get back on my feet very quickly to ease that pain in my parents and my brothers, sisters.
One sentence you'd describe yourself in.
In love.
Thank you so much.